Okay, so today we're going deep on something that's pretty messy and pretty common too, infidelity. And we're going to the internet's favorite courtroom for this one.
Reddit, a husband thinks his wife is cheating, and he asks, am I overreacting? But here's the twist. We're not just looking at his story, but we're going to dive into the reactions and the advice in the comments section.
Yeah, and you know what's so fascinating about these online forums? The anonymity. It lets people be brutally honest, which gives us like raw, unfiltered insight into how society views relationships, trust betrayal. It's like we're peeking into the collective consciousness of the internet.
Exactly. So let's set the stage. This husband, he goes by DT Nomad, describes this feeling of being completely blindsided. He talks about 15 years of marriage, a deep connection, and then boom, he finds his wife secretly texting on Instagram late one night while she's sleeping. He clones her profile onto his phone.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's where things get.
That's where it gets interesting.
The fact that he even cloned the profile is interesting in itself.
Mm.
I think it kind of speaks to a need for control in a situation where he feels completely out of control, like the rug has been pulled out from under him. And it really highlights how technology adds its whole other layer of complexity to infidelity.
Absolutely. And what he finds on that clone profile is, well, pretty incriminating. Sexting Jim, selfies, steamy conversations, all with another man. And get this, the other man lives in a country they visit every year for a month. It's like something out of a movie.
It definitely has that dramatic flair and that detail, right? Knowing that they'll be returning to this place where all these virtual interactions were happening adds this layer of anticipation and tension to the whole thing. So we've got DT Nomad feeling completely betrayed and hurt, turning to Reddit for advice.
And boy, does the internet deliver.
Right.
The comment section just explodes with opinions. Some are incredibly supportive, assuring DT Nomad that he's not overreacting at all.
Right.
They validate his pain and confirm that, yes, this is cheating, even if it's online.
This is a good point. This really highlights how the definition of infidelity is kind of evolving in the digital age, right? Is emotional intimacy without physical contact still cheating for a lot of people? The answer is a resounding yes. The betrayal of trust, the emotional damage can be just as real, just as painful as if it were physical.
Right. In the comment section, they're not shy about weighing in on the potential consequences. You've got commenters basically screaming, lawyer up, protect yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting how many people jump straight to legal advice. I think it
Yeah.
reflects a societal shift towards pragmatism,
Yeah.
this like protect yourself at all costs mentality.
And this is where things get really interesting because you start to see this darker side emerge.
Yeah.
You've got the divorce chorus on one side, but then you have these revenge fantasies popping up.
Yes, the internet's love affair with vigilante justice.
Exactly. It's almost like people are living vicariously through DT Nomad and they want to get back at this woman. Suggestions range from canceling the trip, engaging her reaction, to straight up stealing her passport and leaving her stranded. Some even suggest contacting the other man.
Yeah, this is where we see that raw emotional underbelly of the internet. It's fascinating and a little bit unsettling how quickly things escalate from advice to almost encouraging these harmful actions.
It's like there's this collective bloodlust almost, people projecting their own hurt and anger onto the situation. But amidst all the drama and the calls for revenge, we also see a few voices of reason trying to cut through all the noise.
Those are the ones that really intrigue me. They advocate for a totally different approach, counseling communication, actually trying to understand the wife's motivations.
One commenter writes, "Something has gone wrong in your marriage. Cheating is not an appropriate response, but finding out why she felt the need to message this guy is crucial." They're urging DT Nomad to look beyond the surface and try to understand the root of the problem.
This is such a crucial point and one that often gets lost in the heat of the moment, right? Infidelity is rarely this simple black and white issue. It's often a symptom of deeper issues within the relationship.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in all that anger and betrayal, but like that commenter pointed out, there's a whole other side to this story that we're not seeing the wife's perspective.
Right, exactly. I mean, we're only getting one side of the story here filtered through the husband's, hurt and anger. We don't know her side of the story or her reasons or what's going on in their relationship dynamic.
And it makes me think about something that was really interesting in the original post, this whole idea of control or the lack of it.
Oh, that's a great point.
Right.
He talks about knowing her breathing patterns, like suggesting this really deep intimacy and understanding, but then her actions on Instagram totally shatter that sense of knowing.
Yeah,
He feels like he's lost control.
exactly. And then there's the fact that he went and cloned her profile. It almost feels like an attempt to regain that control, to kind of peer into this secret world that she's created.
It's like he's become a digital detective in his own marriage,
Right.
using technology to try to piece together these clues of her infidelity.
And you see that reflected in the advice that he's getting in the comments, too. Some people are telling him to confront her, to expose her with the evidence he's gathered. Others are saying, play the long game. Use this information to your advantage, especially if things end up in divorce.
It's like they're giving him all these different scripts to follow, each with its own like risks and rewards. And it's fascinating how he kind of engages with these suggestions in the comments too. Sometimes he's expressing gratitude, sometimes he pushes back, sometimes he adds details to clarify the situation.
Like when he mentions that his wife isn't very tech savvy,
Oh, right.
which might explain why he felt so confident cloning her profile in the first place.
Right. That little detail adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing. It suggests a potential power imbalance in their relationship, at least when it comes to technology. It makes you wonder about the dynamics between them, beyond this specific instance of infidelity.
And he changed her password after cloning the app, which I think
Mhm.
further reinforces that power dynamic. It's like he's cutting her off from that secret world,
Hmm.
asserting his control.
It makes you wonder about his motivations. Is this solely about uncovering the truth, seeking justice, or is there an element of punishment involved too?
Ooh, that's a good question. Is he trying to make her feel the same pain that he's feeling?
It's hard to say for sure, without knowing more about their relationship in the context of their marriage.
True. I mean,
Right.
we only have this very limited window into their lives, and it's easy to jump to conclusions based on a single Reddit post and, this flood of comments.
But even within that limited frame, we see this wide spectrum of human emotions and motivations playing out. The pain of betrayal, the urge for revenge, the desire for validation. And even in some of the comments, you see these glimmers of empathy and this hope for reconciliation.
It's a reminder that even in the seemingly impersonal world of the internet, human emotions run really deep. They color how we interpret situations, how we offer advice, and how we seek connection when we're hurting.
Absolutely. And in this case, those emotions are even more heightened by the public nature of the forum. I mean, DT Nomad is putting his very personal pain out there for the world to see, inviting strangers to weigh in on one of the most difficult experiences a person can go through.
Which is what makes these deep dives so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
We get to see these raw, unfiltered glimpses into the human condition and how we all navigate love loss, betrayal, especially in this digital age.
It's like we're all collectively trying to make sense of these messy, complicated situations, offering, support, judgment, and everything in between.
And it just highlights how, even with all the technology that connects us today, we still crave that connection and understanding, especially when we're facing something as painful as infidelity.
It's a reminder that even in the vastness of the internet, we're not alone in our struggles. And sometimes even the most challenging experiences can open up these conversations that help us understand ourselves and each other a little bit better.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the emotional fallout of infidelity, but what about the practical side of things?
Oh, yeah.
What about the legal implications?
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the emotional drama, but there are real-world consequences to consider.
So for someone like DT Nomad, what should they actually do with this information they've uncovered? Does it even matter legally?
That's where things get a little tricky. You see, infidelity, while emotionally devastating, doesn't always have direct legal consequences in a divorce. It depends on where you live.
Right, because fault isn't always a factor in divorce proceedings these days, is it?
Exactly. A lot of places have moved towards no-fault divorce, meaning you don't have to prove adultery or wrongdoing to end the marriage. But that doesn't mean that DT Nomad's discovery is irrelevant.
So even if you're not in a fault state, this information could still come into play.
Absolutely. It could potentially impact things like spousal support or the division of assets, especially if there's evidence that marital funds were used to facilitate the affair. Think like hotel rooms, lavish gifts, maybe even trips to that country they visit every year.
So it becomes less about punishing the cheating spouse and more about making sure things are fair financially.
Precisely, it's about protecting one's own interests. And that's why so many commenters are really urging DT Nomad to consult with a lawyer, getting legal advice tailored to his specific circumstances and jurisdiction. That's absolutely crucial.
And of course, it's not just about the money. They have a son. So custody is a huge factor.
Right, and while infidelity in itself doesn't automatically disqualify someone from being a good parent, It could be a factor in determining custody arrangements, depending on the specific details of the situation.
Especially if there are concerns about, the parent's judgment, their stability, or the potential negative impact the affair could have on the child's well-being.
Exactly. And this is where the advice to document everything becomes particularly relevant.
Yeah.
Those screenshots, while obtained through maybe questionable means, could potentially serve as evidence in a custody battle.
It's tricky, though, right? You want to protect the child from any potential harm, but you also don't want to unnecessarily weaponize the infidelity.
Yeah.
Create an even more adversarial environment.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, and one that requires careful consideration. Ideally, DT Nomad would seek guidance from a legal professional who can assess the situation objectively and advise him on the best course of action.
So if you're finding yourself in a situation like DT Nomads, what's the key takeaway here? What's the most important piece of advice we can offer?
I think the most crucial advice is don't let your emotions completely dictate your actions. Take a step back, process the information, and seek guidance from trusted sources, whether that's a therapist, a lawyer, a close friend who can offer objective advice.
Because as tempting as it might be to lash out, seek revenge, or make rash decisions fueled by all that anger and hurt, the best course of action is one that prioritizes long-term well-being both for yourself and for any children involved.
Absolutely. It's about making informed choices that protect your interests, promote healing, and ultimately lead to a more positive and stable future.
Wow, what a roller coaster of a deep dive. We went from the raw emotions of betrayal to the complexities of online advice, and then straight into the legal ramifications of infidelity in the digital age.
Yeah, it's a reminder that relationships are complicated and there's no easy answer when it comes to navigating infidelity. It really highlights the importance of clear communication, strong boundaries, and seeking support when things get tough.
It's also a testament to the power of online communities,
Yeah.
right? How they can provide support and validation, but also fuel some pretty intense reactions.
For sure, the internet can be a double-edged sword. It's important to remember that not all advice is created equal, and it's always best to approach online information with a critical eye.
Well, listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought. If you enjoyed this exploration of infidelity in the digital age, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the complexities of human experience.
And don't forget to check out Shauna Pelage's YouTube channel for even more insightful content on relationships, personal growth, and navigating the challenges of modern life. Until next time.